From ancient pieces of the Ark of the Covenant to the real reason why Jesus went up the mountain. These are the top 5 biblical artifacts you didn't know were discovered in 2023. Number 5. A lost gospel. Scholars have been debating for decades whether Jesus actually wrote anything himself, and if so, what did he write? The problem is that no writings from Jesus have ever been found. The earliest manuscripts we have are from Paul and other apostles who knew Jesus. So there is some debate as to whether or not his teachings were accurately recorded. But that may all change after a lost gospel was discovered by archaeologists in the deserts of Egypt. This new discovery could rewrite history. Here's what we know so far about the mysterious gospel. The manuscript itself is actually a collection of different texts, including the Gospel of Jesus Christ, the Apocalypse of Paul, and the previously unknown Gospel of the Egyptians. All three were written in Coptic, an ancient Egyptian language, and date back to around the 4th century AD. That would make them roughly 1,700 years old. The most exciting part is that the Gospel is written in a style that seems to be very similar to the other Gospels in the New Testament. It includes parables and sayings attributed to Jesus himself. And it even seems to include a reference to Mary Magdalene. However, the discovery has not been officially released yet, so scholars have not had much of a chance to study it. What they do know is that this particular manuscript may be one of the oldest references we have to the Gospel of Thomas, another non-canonical gospel that was never included in the Bible. What's most interesting about the Gospel of Thomas is that it paints a very different picture of Jesus than the one presented in the canonical Gospels. In fact, some scholars believe that the Gospel of Thomas could contain some of Jesus' actual words. If true, this would be an incredible discovery. Unfortunately, the Gospel was likely written down many years after Jesus died, so it may not be exactly what he taught. Either way, it is an important piece of early Christian history and helps us better understand the development of the church in the first few centuries after Christ. Number 4. The Lost City of Sodom. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the most well-known in the Bible. It tells the tale of 2 wicked cities that God destroyed with fire and brimstone. In Genesis chapter 19, we read about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and how only Lot and his 2 daughters survived. Many people believe that Sodom and Gomorrah are just a story that was made up to teach a lesson. But others believe that they were real places that were destroyed in a massive volcanic eruption. And now evidence has been found that supports this theory. In 2023, archaeologists announced that they had discovered the ruins of a city that was destroyed around the same time that Sodom and Gomorrah were supposedly destroyed. The city, which they called Tol el-Hammam, was located in a region known as the Dead Sea Valley. According to the researchers, the city was destroyed by a large explosion that caused massive destruction and sent shockwaves throughout the Middle East. Now, while this discovery has not been officially linked to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, it does provide an interesting new theory. Some experts believe that the explosion may have been caused by a meteor or a comet. If that is the case, then it could explain why so many people believe that the cities were destroyed by God. Whatever the cause, it is clear that the destruction of Tol el-Hammam was a major event that had a profound impact on the region, and it is possible that it may have inspired the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Number 3. Ancient Jerusalem Seal. Archaeologists have uncovered a small clay seal that they believe could help solve one of the biggest mysteries surrounding Jesus Christ. The seal dates back to around the year 66, just before the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. Etched into the seal is a Hebrew inscription that reads, "Belonging to Jesus, son of Joseph." The discovery of the seal comes at a time when many scholars are questioning the historical accuracy of the Gospels. The 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, are the foundation of Christianity. They tell the story of Jesus' life, death and resurrection, and provide the basis for Christian faith. However, the Gospels were written many years after Jesus died, and there is some debate as to whether they accurately reflect what Jesus taught. Some scholars argue that the Gospels are full of errors and contradictions, and that they should not be taken literally. Others argue that the Gospels are reliable accounts of Jesus' life and teachings. The discovery of the seal could shed light on this debate by providing physical evidence that Jesus existed. If the seal really did belong to Jesus, then it would prove that he was a real historical figure who lived in Jerusalem. This could help to bolster the case for those who believe that the Gospels are accurate accounts of Jesus' life. Of course, skeptics could argue that the seal is a forgery, but it would still be an amazing archaeological find. Either way, the discovery of the seal is sure to spark debate and discussion among scholars. Only time will tell what new discoveries come to light, and what they reveal about the true history of Jesus Christ. Note the staff of Moses. For many Christians, the Old Testament is filled with stories of faith, courage, and hope. From creation to the Exodus, the stories of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the journey of Israel to the Promised Land. The Old Testament is a rich tapestry of faith and history. One of the most fascinating characters in the Old Testament is Moses, the prophet who led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. According to the Bible, Moses was called by God to lead his people to freedom. He parted the Red Sea, received the Ten Commandments, and led his people to the Promised Land. Moses was a pivotal figure in Jewish history, and his staff was an iconic symbol of his power and authority. Now, for years, many people have dismissed the story of Moses as nothing more than a fairy tale. However, new archaeological evidence suggests that there may be more to the story than meets the eye. A team of archaeologists recently discovered a staff that they believe may have belonged to Moses. The staff is made of wood and is decorated with ancient symbols and hieroglyphics. While the staff itself is not necessarily evidence of Moses' existence, it does provide some interesting insights into the culture and history of the time period in which he is said to have lived. According to the Bible, Moses was born in Egypt around 1500 BC and led the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt. Around 1400 BC, he is said to have died on Mount Nebo, overlooking the Promised Land. While mainstream historians have traditionally dismissed the story of Moses as a myth, there is growing evidence that he was a real historical figure. In recent years, archaeologists have uncovered a number of artifacts that suggest that Moses and the Israelites really did wander in the desert for 40 years. These artifacts include pottery, tools, and weapons that date back to the time period in which the Exodus is said to have taken place. While there is still no direct evidence of Moses himself, the staff is an intriguing find that adds to the mystery and intrigue of one of the most iconic figures in history. Number 1. The Shroud of Jesus Christ. The Shroud of Turin is a piece of linen cloth that is believed by some to be the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. The shroud is 14 feet long and 3 feet wide and bears the image of a man who appears to have been crucified. The origin of the shroud is unknown, but it is believed to have been brought to Europe from the Middle East in the 14th century. The shroud has been the subject of much debate and controversy over the years. In 1988, a group of scientists claimed that the shroud was a medieval forgery. However, other scientists have argued that the shroud is authentic, and that it really is the burial cloth of Jesus Christ. There is no conclusive evidence to support either claim, and the shroud remains a mystery. However, new information has just been released that could change everything. According to reports, Italian scientists have discovered traces of pollen on the shroud that could prove it really did wrap the body of Jesus. The pollen is from plants that only grow in the Middle East, specifically in a region that includes Jerusalem and Bethlehem. This would seem to confirm that the shroud did indeed come from the Middle East, and that it was likely used to bury Jesus Christ. However, skeptics have already begun to question this new evidence. They argue that the pollen could have been planted on the shroud, and that it is not really proof that it wrapped the body of Jesus. Only time will tell what new discoveries will be made and what they will reveal about the true history of the shroud. Those are the top 5 biblical artifacts that you did know were discovered in 2023. We hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.